Well, the U.S. dollar has done substantial damage to the global economy because it was the reserve. I mean, we have basically exported our inflation all around the world, and the world has suffered from this relationship. America has gained. Well, I think gold is going a lot higher than $4,000. And I think it probably needs to be a lot higher for there to be the type of economic environment that would make such a candidacy, kind of feasible as a reality.
Peter Schiff, the chief economist at Euro-Pacific Asset Management, believes that the era of U.S. dollar supremacy is gradually fading away. According to Schiff, gold is poised to regain its status as authentic currency as historical patterns repeat themselves. Schiff also addresses the debt crisis in the United States, the consequences of dedollarization, and shares insights on his potential presidential candidacy. The debt ceiling refers to the maximum amount of money that the United States can spend, which is currently set at approximately $31.4 trillion. Normally, increasing the government's spending limits is a standard procedure. Peter posted a tweet. Experts agree that if the debt ceiling is not raised and the U.S. government is no longer able to borrow, that it will be impossible for the government to pay its bills. That means the U.S. has already borrowed more than it can repay. Either default or massive inflation is inevitable. In another tweet, he said, "The problem is the debt, not the ceiling. The problem will never be solved if Congress keeps raising the ceiling. The U.S. is definitely headed for a sovereign debt and dollar crisis, but not because Congress fails to raise the debt ceiling, but because it succeeds."
The problem is the debt. It's not the ceiling. In fact, the ceiling is actually part of the solution. The problem is they keep raising the ceiling every time we approach it or hit it, as opposed to doing something to stay within the ceiling. That was the whole purpose of the debt ceiling, which actually started back in 1917, coinciding with America's entry into the First World War and the fact that we were borrowing a lot of money. And so Congress wanted to put some kind of cap on how much money the government could borrow. And the problem is, we keep raising the ceiling. And so it's not really achieving its intended purpose, which was to put some limit on how much debt we could accumulate. But every time we get to the ceiling, though, we just get all this political theater where the Republicans pretend they actually want to cut spending, but they don't actually propose any significant spending cuts. And of course, the Democrats don't want to cut any spending. Nobody wants to raise taxes, at least not on the middle class, which is where all the money is. And so the debt ceiling always gets raised. This is all political posturing. This is throwing meat to your base. But at the end of the day, the politicians will come together and once again do the wrong thing and raise the debt ceiling. In contrast to what they claim, this is not about paying our bills. If we were going to pay our bills, we would pay them and not raise the debt ceiling. This is about continuing to not pay our bills. Instead of paying our bills, we borrow the money. And we can't continue to avoid paying our bills unless we raise the debt ceiling. So that's what it's about. It's not about doing the responsible thing. It's about continuing to do the reckless and irresponsible thing. The Democrats are saying, hey, if we don't raise this debt ceiling, it's a disaster. Interest rates are going to rise. Everybody's going to suffer. That is what's going to happen if we do raise the debt ceiling. See, all the bad things that they say are going to happen if we don't raise it are going to happen because we have been raising it. The fact that we keep raising the ceiling guarantees a debt crisis, because the only thing that's going to put a stop to the debt is a crisis. And so we've chosen to have a crisis on the market's terms instead of trying to manage something less horrific on our own terms.
Peter Schiff has issued a cautionary statement highlighting the imminent threat of a death blow to the U.S. dollar. Schiff predicts that the ongoing financial crisis will lead to the loss of the dollar's global reserve currency status. In a tweet, Peter said, "As if foreigners didn't have enough incentives to dump their U.S. dollars, the FDIC just gave them another. Foreign customers of SVB weren't extended the same protection as domestic customers and will take heavy losses. The message to foreigners is clear. Don't bank in the U.S."
And the dollar crashes, and it will crash. That means other currencies are rising. Now, what does that mean? That means as Americans get poorer, everybody else gets richer. And so Americans consume less and everybody else consumes more. All the stuff that Americans used to buy will be too expensive for Americans to afford. But that stuff is still going to be here. The factories aren't going to start producing it just because Americans stop consuming it. So what's going to happen is people in other countries are going to get to buy what the Americans can no longer afford. See, they're not buying it right now because the Americans are outbidding them. So all this is going to change, and it's a big loss for the U.S. and a gain for the rest of the world. I don't think anybody's really dumping dollars yet. I think they're slowly divesting. I don't think it's a rush for the exit yet. I think that's ultimately going to happen. And when that does happen, the dollar's exchange rate is going to be deteriorating at a far more rapid pace. I mean, so far the decline from the peak of around 115 to where we are now around 101, that's been very slow and steady and orderly. And I think that it will continue to be slow and steady, maybe until the dollar index gets around 80 or maybe 70. But once it cracks below that level, I expect the pace to really accelerate and potentially into an outright crash in the dollar.
Early in this month, Peter posted a tweet. The U.S. merchandise trade deficit surged again to a new all-time record high of $107.6 billion in January. The U.S. economy is a complete disaster. The Russia situation is buying the dollar some extra time, but with exploding trade deficits, this reprieve can't last much longer. Peter believes in the substantial technological investments we've made over the years. Recent advancements like AI hold great promise. Improved efficiency and better tools are the outcomes we can expect.
The reason that our consumption-based economy works is because of the dollar status. We're able to export dollars and import real goods. We have $1 trillion a year trade deficit, and we pay for all that merchandise just by printing money. So we don't have to expend any resources, yet we can import $1 trillion worth of goods that the rest of the world consumed considerable resources producing. So the first thing that's going to happen is we're not going to be able to run these trade deficits anymore. Our trade is going to have to be brought into balance. And that means basically, let's say $1 trillion worth of merchandise every year disappears from our shelves. And there's really nothing to replace it with. The good news is that we've had a lot of technological advancements over the years. And even recently, you can see what's going on with AI and the promise that might bring. And so to the extent that we are more efficient, we have better tools, it'll make it easier for the free market to get us out of this hole and to rebuild a viable, self-sustaining economy again. But the path from here to there is very bumpy. And a lot of people are going to lose a lot of money along the way.
The world is witnessing the decline of the U.S. dollar. The global economic situation has posed a challenge to its dominance among international investors. Peter believes that if we continue raising the debt ceiling, it will lead to a crisis. Peter suggests that the solution lies in stopping the continuous raising of the debt ceiling. To wrap up our discussion today, we invite you to leave your thoughts in the comments section. If you found this content useful, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel for the latest news and videos. Thanks for joining us.